Hey there, Smite fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of cores.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
Happy Friday, Smite fans. You are watching the SMITE Pro League, powered by our friends over at Alienware. Don't worry, I got your backs. You're telling me an Alien wore this? Just doesn't hit the same unless PBM is saying it. But it does segue me nicely into talking about Alienware, our title sponsor for this year in the SPL. Follow them on all the social media platforms at Alienware. That's Twitter and Instagram mainly, and then alienwarearena.com. But if you want to pick up some Alienware gear, go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW for some discounts, depending on your region, of course, on some sweet Alienware gear. My name is Dolson Gormizer. Joins me to talk about at least the first matchup in the SPL today. And Gore, a little bit of yesterday. The Bolts get back to their winning ways. The Titans look good, but they end up falling 2-0 to the Leviathan. So the top teams continuing to perform here in Phase 2.
I think the most impressive thing is the Scarabs pushing the Bolts to 3. I mean, It is on the back of a phenomenal steal that they are able to get on a Fire Giant steal, but it ultimately is one of those things that they are shaping up. And again, this is the phase to do it. If you are looking for improvements, right now is the time to do it, because originally this was a Worlds qualifying. Things mattered heavily in the end game for the year, but now it's just for the playoffs. You're just looking forward a couple of weeks now since we have those, and then you get to come into Phase 3 a lot more solidly as a team.
We got a couple good matchups today. Kings, Valks, Jade Dragons, Oni Warriors to round out the day. Here's your standings going in to these matchups. And the first one we've got here, Gore, Camelot Kings, second place team. Chance to be first place with the, I believe, the tiebreaker over the Bolts. If nothing else, they'll be tied for first with a win here over the Valkyries who are, for the moment, above the Solar Scarabs as far as standings goes, would be tied for last if they end up dropping this matchup. But important implications here in this one, Gore. You mentioned not Worlds implications necessarily, but Phase 2 playoffs.
Yeah.
There's a lot to look forward to there. Getting your tournament feet underneath yourself is important. And the Valkyries tournament, Phase 2 tournament hopes kind of on the edge of things here in this matchup.
You had mentioned it, like Kings specifically, they win this 2-0. I believe they have the plus-minus over the Bolts, so they are able to hover up in that first seed spot. Valkyries are in a maybe the worst position you can be in outside of the Scarabs, who I believe now are just completely eliminated from the running, which is not only do you have to beat the Kings 2-0, which is a tall order for anybody, even the Bolts were able to do it, you have to do that for the next 3 sets after that as well. And the Oni Warriors have to lose every single set 2-0 to make sure that you can take that spot and shift back in there. So we'll know pretty quickly whether or not the Valkyries are going to be going.
Yeah, brutal stretch of games for the Valkyries to make it to the Phase 2 playoffs. Let's talk about the Kings, though, the favorite in this matchup. And what's been going so right for these guys? Because, my goodness, Gore, after their matchup over the Bolts last weekend, this Kings team, even before that, kind of look near unstoppable. They've gotten their feet underneath themselves, and they've really detracted from that early style. Early Season 8, you know, the ping conversation was pretty big, and it was Twig on setup, big man tings on big burst follow-up damage ultimate. And they've kind of created their own style, a lot of it behind Genetics, who is playing like one of the best supports in the league at the moment.
And I believe it was last week there's been a couple of games yesterday that changed this, but he was number 1 in kill participation. He's number 2 in kill participation in the league, and he is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, this is something, when you look at Phase 2 stats, obviously this team's been winning a lot, but when you look at how their wins are divvied up, you see a lot of Ymir highlights here. He's played 8 games of Ymir. He's won 6 of them. And with a 2.5 KDA on this god as well. So it is a very, very good performing god for him on the Ymir, but then you look at the Terra, 7 games played, 6 games won. You have to go down a lot further. He's got a 100% win rate on the Khepri. I mean, you have to figure out a way to ban out Genetics. And the glory is it's one of 2 things. One, you take all these bans, and Genetics still plays a 5th tier support like he's playing as Ymir. Maybe it's a little worse just through meta and shifts like that. But also, he can be the lightning rod. Like, if you force Genetics onto a 5th tier support, you're letting Tings have his pick, you're letting Twig and Variety, as well as Netroid, all get their picks. And so, it feels like a lose-lose situation. You've just got a great support player who is active in all of your kills. I mean, he is, again, the highest skill participation on this team, and number 2 in the league. I mean, it's insane how active on the map Genetics is and how difficult it is to deal with him in terms of play.
This is a team now. Think last year you're looking at, SSG, Radiance, Ghost, as teams that are wildly difficult to ban against because it feels like everyone on that team has picks that are worthy of being banned. This Kings team, Gore, and maybe it's kind of a non-statement because of how high they are up in the standings, a very difficult team to ban against, and a lot of the bans tend to go against Genetics, who joins me now for the pregame interview. Genetics, first and foremost, thanks for sitting down with me prior to this big matchup for you guys against the Valkyries. Talk to me a little bit, though, about the support meta right now. Benevolence obviously got some changes put in. How does support feel with, I believe, the gift is basically the star item that everyone's been going for. How does support feel at the moment?
Yeah, it's definitely weird. So with Benevolence before, if you didn't build it and you built something else, it felt awful. But we're all in the same playing field now, we're all building the same relic. No one's falling behind in XP or gold. It means you're a little bit more wave dependent than before, where you could roam around the map and get free XP and farm without stealing from your teammates. But the fact now you can do it, just lane dependent, it just makes the game a little bit more team focused, I think.
And I'm sure it doesn't feel great on top of what feels like 3-4 bans going your way in most of these matchups. Do you feel like you have a bit of a target on your back in the pick ban phase? Feels like you're constantly eating, a handful of your top picks in the ban phase.
Yeah, I think to be fair, I think like a lot of top 4 supports like Mike, Jake, and Rongi, we all do take 1 or 2 bans in the pick and ban phase for the most part, because there are a few like top support gods right now. But it's definitely annoying when it starts hitting your 3rd and 4th god where it's a little bit out of meta, but it's just something the team deals with, and it means that we get stronger picks elsewhere around the map. So it's an advantage in some ways.
Oh, and you guys have 4 matchups left prior to the Phase 2 playoffs. Valks today, Leviathans, Dragons, and then the Oni Warriors to round things out. What's the focus of this team? What are you looking to improve on prior to the Phase 2 playoffs?
I think it's just making sure we're getting good practice in and making sure we're staying consistent. I think when we find our footing in the league and we find our play styles and we really start creating that synergy that I think other teams like Dragons and Bolts and Leviathans have had to work on for the last 2 years,
Yep.
I think it's important that we start finding that now later on in the year and apply that for Worlds and the Split 3 especially.
If there is still synergy to build here, scary thoughts for the rest of the league. Genetics, best of luck in your matchup. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the focus of this team apparently still to build synergy with one another and get better, and they are tied for first with a win here over the Valkyries, so they could widen that gap in the mind of Genetics. Goran, that's not necessarily a new thought. We talked to Captain Twig after the last win that the Kings had, and Twig was asked, are you playing your best Smite right now? And this is a theme with this team. No, we're not playing our best Smite right now. There's still room to grow for this Kings team.
Yeah, and that is a scary thought. I mean, again, like you just mentioned it, but the fact that they 2-0'd the Bolts last week, and the Bolts, admittedly, they had an off week. That entire week in playset didn't feel the same way they had for the 8 sets prior.
Yep.
But now you're looking at a Kings team that is not only very hungry, but has shown a lot of accomplishments, and they have a lot to work up to for the rest of the phase.
And this is now a conversation around the Valkyries and areas that they need to improve. Because, look, we've talked a lot about this team, the ins and outs, the ups and downs. To say this team has had a struggle so far in Season 8, I think is more than fair. This duo lane specifically around Raffer hasn't quite found its footing just yet. Raffers love the Terra picks, love the Fafnir picks, but still has, the veteranship, the shot-calling nature in that back pocket. If this team is going to succeed, gotta think it's around Raffer.
And I think the duo lane in its entirely. So Raffer, right now, just to throw out some numbers for you guys, number 37 in the league for his KDA. You can see right there, 0.94. So there's just a couple players lower than him, and one of them...
Is that out of 40? If
yeah,
I'm doing
out of
math
40.
correctly?
Yeah, so that's 37 out of 40. There's 3 players below him. One of them is Imelito. So if I'm looking towards the duo lane for this team to pick it up. I mean, we've seen Ducky have some really, really good performances. It's bounced back and forth. I understand, like, ping is an issue. Kings are dealing with it as well, and they seem to be grasping with it just fine for the players that are dealing with it because they're damn near up at the top, right? Like, I mean, depending on how the set goes, they might just be your number 1 seed. So I'm looking towards the duo lane. I'm looking towards some of the synergy and just what they're able to get together, as well as their picks and bans. There's a lot that they can perform on, and we've seen perform on. It's just getting it all the cylinders firing at the exact same time. That's really been where the struggle's at.
Yeah, and let's get our feet under us as far as the duo lane goes against Genetics and Netrioid that apparently are playing super well. And I do want to have a conversation around Netrioid because Genetics has had praise heaped on him, and it's deservedly so because Genetics has been playing so well. I think Netrioid has been an unsung hero for this team, right? I mean, Rom has been played 5 out of the last 6 games for Netrioid here in the duo lane, with Chernobog being the 1 out of 5. 7-1, 4-2, 4-0, 4-3, 3-2, 2-0 as far as kills and deaths go. So he has not gone negative in any of the last 6 games. In a kind of a quiet, eyes-forward type Hunter and Netrioid pairing with Genetics has just made this team look better.
This is one that is, if you were watching specifically when Yarkor was like carry, I think Yarkor was like at least the most self-sufficient Hunter that we got to see. I mean, he's getting solo kills, he's bullying people out. We see Cyclone Spin doing that a lot more recently. Netrioid might be, at this point, especially with Yarkor moving over, the one that is taking that role, right? A lot of these other guys are really good team players. Throw, your Beras, your Zapmans, people who are really fitting in well with the squad around them. But if you just put Netrioid on an island, he is standing tall on that island and happily doing so. I think he is, like you said, a force to be reckoned with. And that goes for a lot of people on this team. I mean, you start to factor in what Variety's able to do. Sometimes he's just playing for the team and he's playing that role. He's grabbing a Guardian in the solo lane. Sometimes he's looking for solos. You look at Ting, same thing.
He's also grabbing Variety's also grabbing the Hell in the solo lane. That's a pick that he's
making
enjoyed.
You cry.
And making you cry. And the Valkyries won't be crying, at least at the hands of Hell here this game. Tiamat and Hell both banned out by the Valkyries. Yamoja, Fenrir, and Odin taken away by the Camelot Kings. So the Camelot Kings in a strong spot here. They're in the first pick slot. And this is a team that doesn't necessarily shy away from building their mindset early. And genetics in in that interview was like, yeah, it gets annoying. You know, the first two we kind of expected. The top 4 supports in the league, as he worded it, kind of expect to receive some of those bans. When you start getting a little bit further down, it does get annoying. So genetics actually in a great spot here, Gore.
Yeah.
Ymir and Terra both left unbanned. Umoja the only one banned away. So maybe in a spot where you can wait a little bit longer. Maybe you don't want to wait until that second wave, because whatever's remaining there might get banned out, but don't necessarily have to first pick either.
I will say this is a good spot for Raffer as well. Terra has been pretty kind to the Valkyries. Admittedly, they've only got 2 wins so far this phase. One of them was with the Terra, so I don't necessarily think it's something for them to shy away from. And Raffer's God Pool is something to, like as we had highlighted, to maybe lean into here. The thing that is most notable to me, though, is the fact that the Kings kind of levied away from what we're used to seeing. The Valkyries have a very specific kind of, I want to say, play style, or at least God Pool, that we've seen a lot of teams lean into and kind of ban out, specifically Johnny up front.
Yep.
And they just went with standard bans. So the Valkyries do get to have kind of the full range of picks that we're used to seeing out of them.
And that doesn't necessarily surprise me because of what Genetics said in the pregame interview. We're focusing on our game and finding that consistency. And right now, you know, they're building a very Kings-esque draft.
Yeah.
Granted, we've only seen 2 picks, but Terra and Osiris slots into what we know that this Kings team likes to play. On the other side, though, Gore, talk about top picks. It's not like the Valkyries didn't get anything good in their top 2 either. Gilgamesh has been high priority. Raijin as well has been kind of that stalwart. We don't get Tiamat. We don't get, or maybe in this case, want Morgan Le Fay.
Yeah.
Raijin's kind of that tried and true answer, so some comfort maybe for Zeros in the mid lane.
Yeah, and I honestly think Zeros has been looking much better on this pick as of late. I mean, compared to what we've seen a lot for the Valkyries in mid, this Raijin is something I'm leaning on. They've been looking better and better, and this is a good draft for them. I think that there's not quite a lot of synergy just yet for that Fafnir. Maybe that's the only real thing I can pick apart. But the Raijin, as well as Fafnir, as well as Gilgamesh, are top gods in their role and all really good performers specifically for the Valkyries, and so they're setting themselves up for success.
Feels like a pretty good ROM pick here for the Camelot Kings. If you look at the Fafnir, synergizing well with that bow build, ROM and Artemis feel like they're at the forefront of that conversation, and so Artemis gets banned away by the Valkyries, and the Kings take the other option, and a great one for Netrioid. Kind of a dual-purpose pick there. You get something for Netrioid that he's played now 6 times in the last 7 games, counting this game we're about to go into, and take away what could have been one of the top-tier picks for Emilito. So, really good for both teams here. And then the Kings identifying what are we most scared of around this Fafnir pick. Well, Izanami is still there, so you're going to take that one off the board. On the other side, though, mentioned how Variety in the Hell is a scary thought. Variety apparently in Aphrodite is a scary thought, or could have been in the mid lane even for BMT. But the Morgan Le Fay also taken off the table. So difference in mindset score from both of these teams in the second wave of bans.
And honestly, you want to talk about numbers, I want to say leaning heavily towards one side than the other. It's when you look at the win rates that things really start to break. The Osiris, the Terra, and the ROM. Granted, it's going to be skewed, right? One of these teams has a lot of wins, the other one doesn't.
Yep.
But every single one of these gods for the Kings right now is an 80% plus win rate for them. I mean, they are all constantly
you're not
onslaughts.
squeaking by at like 51.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I mean, and some of them, like, it's worth mentioning, the Kings do have some, like, I think it's the Fafnir for genetics is around that 50% mark. This is just a really good draft for them, and you had mentioned the comfort, but it's going to be coming in with really hard hitting.
And it feels, Gore, now if we can return to the Hunter conversation, you know, Emilito might have liked the ROM or the Izanami or the Artemis, but of course none of those 3 available. So Xbalanque ends up being the pick here for the Valks duo lane that we've given some attention to going into this matchup. So Fafnir plus X-Ball in lane up against ROM and Terra. What kind of confidence does that give you?
Honestly, I like it. I don't know how much it's going to find control. Again, it's genetic setup that is going to be very difficult, and the Netrioid, who I just described as maybe the most self-sufficient hunter.
Right.
You know, Emilito gets left on that island, and it hasn't necessarily been as successful for him, but Fafnir and Xbalanque can work well together. And admittedly, Xbalanque, like, he doesn't get the same benefits your Artemis and ROM are going to have. So early on, he's probably going to need to get a little more boost, which is not necessarily where I'm thinking of my Xbalanques as that early game play. But later, in the middle of a team fight, this is a good draft for the Valkyries.
Wow. Gore, I am curious, and I'll give you a second to look it up. Now what the Giannis win rate is for this Kings team. So if we get to a point where all 5 picks are 80+% win rates, Go ahead.
For phase 2, it's just 75.
Oh, no!
Man.
But you can round up, right? It's 5 is where you bump up. No, we're
Exactly,
not
yeah, you just round up 5%.
Just round up a big old 5%.
Well, here you go.
So
if they win,
75 plus is still
if
good,
they
though,
win
right?
this game, it will be 80%.
It will be a
because
little bit
they've only
higher.
played
All right.
4 games so far this phase with him.
And then Hercules for some aggression, and I'm going to assume that's Variety over in solo lane playing
Now I
that
gotta look
Hercules
that one
here,
up just
Gore.
for
Xing Chen is what's being hovered now for the Valkyries to round out their draft. But let's talk about what's locked in here for the Kings. We've shown some love to the Valkyries draft. Osiris, Terra, Ram, Giannis, Hercules. Outside of win rates, do you think that's a comp that works well together?
Yes, but also with win rates, Hercules keeps it above the 80% because he's got a 100% win rate for the Kings right now.
Out of how many games?
You're not supposed to ask
No,
that
you're right.
question.
That doesn't matter.
Sylvanas
right?
has a
It's win rate.
100% win rate in this SPL, and all of those wins are on Bobby. That is a factual statement I can make.
And that's an important
Ignore
fact.
that it's one game.
That is a good fact. So the Hercules rounds up the average win rate of all these picks for the Kings to above 80%.
Yeah.
Which is a scary thought. As a whole, let's ignore the
Yes,
win rates,
we'll
which
ignore win
is hard
rates.
to do because the Kings are
I'll
just
put
that
it to
good.
the side. I'll close
Is this a draft that works well together in your eyes?
Yes, I think it's going to be. Again, it does feel. I want to say maybe not as actually synergistic as what the Valks have in the middle of a team fight, but it's all a bunch of pieces that work incredibly well together, which the Osiris in the jungle, good setup for something like a Giannis. Giannis, there's a lot of really good targets for burst on the other side. Ram is good on his own, but also really great in the middle of a team fight at setting up a lot of these other high damage players to get some kills. They've got great setup from the Hercules and the Terra, as well as, again, a little bit from that Osiris. Yep. It's going to fit well in the middle of a team fight.
Well, Gore, you and I are going to get a chance to think a little bit more on how these comps are going to get to work together. And everyone at home, now is your chance to get up, go to the bathroom, grab some snacks. We got a remake coming in. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come right back, Gore and I will continue to set things up for game number 1. Appreciate the patience, everybody, as we get things all sorted out for game number one.
Blast 'em.
You can't. Your Gore is encouraging me to, so I will. It's not the Valkyries. It's Variety. He put the wrong settings for this set in the spectator. I think with the mode was different or something. Anyway, I'm blasting Variety here.
Oh look,
It's
Genetics
causing
did it on
upset.
Twitter, so you're not even the first one. It's okay.
Oh, thank God. Okay, great.
You're
So I
just
feel less
you were
bad now.
just quoting Genetics there.
Yes. All right. So this just in from Twitter. Genetics says it was Harry. By the way, you heard it here first. Not from me, but from Genetics himself. Gore, we were talking a little bit though about the Kings draft.
Yes, sir.
And how the win rates maybe speak for themselves,
Yep.
and they got a good comp.
I mean, they're 8-2, right? Their win rates are always going to speak for themselves. I think it is going to be not just play on field, but also looking more towards the Valkyries to me, which they think they've got a great draft. The weakest part of it is maybe the Shibalanke, but weak is not necessarily weak in this case. I also think it's going to be interesting because it looks like and should be a Xingqian, presumably solo for Ducky,
Against Hercules.
which is going to be maybe not so great for him.
How's
I mean,
that
there's
feel?
a lot of fun potential for kills once you hit level 5, but until then, Hercules is definitely going to be a bully in that lane. And after having seen Ducky have such really, really good solo lane performances, I mean, he soloed Nika 3 times the other week, it feels kind of weird to put him on something that maybe doesn't have that same potential.
This is total theory crafting time.
Okay.
Who does Hercules have one of the highest like first blood solo kill potentials you think in the solo lane? If we're talking strictly warriors, we're not throwing any like weird stuff over there in the solo lane, and what you could expect a solo lane matchup to be in the realm of normalcy. Do you think Hercules is up there? I think he's got to be, right?
I think he almost has to
That
be.
comes to the forefront of my
number
mind,
one,
like
yeah.
a push pull or
Well,
something.
yeah,
like
because
that.
that's what it is. Like most of the first bloods you'll see from a Hercules is, hey, you stepped up slightly closer to my side of the map. I knocked you and pushed you into my tower, smacked you twice. The tower did the rest of the damage, and we were able to get the kill. And that, like, think of how many other warriors are able to do that. The answer's none.
Yeah, I don't know if any. But you're right. Ducky has been on a first blood streak here over Nika. I think he got a couple, and that's a pretty big statement there for Ducky. Not sure, Gore, if he has the same potential on the Xingqian up against the Hercules. Can the Camelot Kings dash away the Valkyries Phase 2 playoff hopes? Let's find out in Game 1. J-Mac and Taco will take us in.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Gore. Hopping into Game 1 with J-Mac and Taco, with Doug as well on the Spectator. You know, I want to touch on with that. I think Hercules is definitely in the top 3 for First Blood potential. I would say Osiris is probably my next bet along with that. Not sure who else I'd throw, but easily I would say probably those top 2.
I'm going to give Hercules number 1 spot there.
Number 1?
I think Hercules has some of the best potential, especially with the Fighters Mass Star. It's just going to be as aggressive as you could imagine, I think, between these two teams. And with all that in mind, J-Mac, I would definitely expect Variety to kind of just look to sort of bully inside of this solo lane.
Yeah, Ducky's going to play very carefully with the Xingqian. Has a lot of CC, but also has a lot of safety. Has the double jump, has the hook slam for that extra bit of CC, and has some basic attack reduction as well in that first ability. So Ducky should be relatively safe on this Guardian going up against Variety, but it is still Hercules. It's something you've got to be paying attention to.
Yeah, Xingqian primarily here for the team fight, but Ducky's still chilling at that level 1 Variety, already looking for the grab and slam. Typically you see that from G10, but both these side lanes getting pretty frisky so far.
I want to talk about some good First Blood potential. Let's talk about Terra. 2 forms of CC. Once she hits level 3 at least, and you can have all 3 of your abilities leveled up. One of the better power spikes for Guardians, especially for kill potential. Johnny blinks in, trying to find Big Man Tings, leaps on top, and one more basic. Johnny, once again for the Valkyries, striking First Blood.
All this discussion about early game aggression, hard to miss out the conversation surrounding Gilgamesh and Raijin. A great punish, I think, from Zeros and Johnny. Just Zeros definitely recognizing the fact that Big Man Tings using those cooldowns on the way for the clear. Full potential for a Thunder Crash to just come clapping in.
This is one of the big plays for the Valkyries. They love getting Ducky, Johnny, specifically those 2 players. They love getting them ahead, getting them those first couple of kills, just because then they can try and snowball the rest of the map in their favor. Ducky, we saw get, I think, 3 solo kills one of the weeks before against Nika. Not something you get to say every day. And then Johnny is the other one that you think of. He usually plays these more aggressive early game assassins or warriors, in this case with the Gilgamesh, going for things like Serket and Fenrir and trying to feed the mid laner.
I feel like Ducky genuinely channeled all of his rage into just punishing Nika in that set against the Warriors. But that's the same kind of aggression, though, that I wouldn't be surprised to see him try to utilize maybe later on. Johnny, on the other hand, he's looking to keep the game pace going in favor of the Valkyries.
Nitroid in danger as well as Imalitu. Disarm goes through, so Nitroid can't fire those basics. Now Nitroid has, or Imalitu has to walk away, but Nitroid still pumping some basics into Raptor. The second Sunder comes through, stun from Genetics, and a blink by Captain Twig, looking for a kill if he can. Diving the tower for Raptor, one more basic will do it, and Captain Twig responds for the Kings.
Great recognition there from Twig to just try and take advantage of how far the Valkyries started pushing up outside of that tower line. Can't blame him because it looked so promising for Emilito for a second there, and the Dust kind of touched on it as well, J-Mac, but this Xbalanque matchup against the ROM, not as bad as it might appear to be on paper. Well, Variety doing his best to defend his blue buff. Great job there, able to actually secure it with the Earthbreaker against the invade from Johnny and Ducky.
You know, it's kind of funny. Xbalanque, at the start of the mid-season, he saw a nice explosion. We saw 4 or 5 games pop out of him almost instantly within the first week or so of play. And then he just disappeared. Everybody just started ignoring him. We saw him utilize at least a fraction of the bow build, maybe not the entirety of it, but portions of it. And then Xbalanque just kind of faded. Why the sudden play of the Xbalanque in this one?
I think that Emilito just wants to try and utilize the global aspect, the global blind specifically, because Camelot Kings, they are a team that I think has great synergy in terms of their primary core between Ting, Genetics, and Captain Twig. So if you make it more difficult to actually see who you're pushing into, then you don't really get as much benefit potentially out of that through space and time from Big Man Ting. So it might be the difference maker to buy the Valhalla Valkyries a little bit more time so that they can actually have a better response or even just a good counter initiation in general.
Now the real question, when Xbalanque ults, are you the person who says, guys, I can't see? Or are you the person who rolls their eyes at the person like me who says it?
I just stand there in pain.
That's fair. That's fair. Oracle Harpies going the way of the Valkyries. Johnny makes a nice rotation over towards mid to drop those. He'll hit level 5. Raffer still not quite at level 5, a little bit behind Genetics, opting for a Lotus Crown for a first item instead of starting the traditional Gauntlet of Thebes.
And I think that this is fair for Genetics, given his gameplay. You would not believe that he is actually trying to play from European ping. He just looks so phenomenal on the Terra. I hope I don't Caster's Curse him in the process, because we saw, I think one of the most impressive sets I saw for Genetics Terra was his Terra gameplay against Sam's Mercury. That was relatively disgusting, and I think that he could also potentially have that same impact here up against the likes of Emilito, who's really got to look out having that Rising Jaguar as the dash escape.
Captain Twig rooted by Ducky, and Ducky shoved against the wall by Variety. And I think it's a good one to point out the Terra against the Mercury specifically. As much as the Ymir is talked about for Genetics, he has insane walls with Ymir every single time he plays, but that's a wall that pops up in front and is horizontal in front of you, where Terra is vertical, you know, straight in line with you. He's had probably some of the craziest walls I've ever seen out of a Terra comparatively. Yes, the Ymir ones are good, but in all honesty, if I'm banning a single god away from this player, I would say the Terra is probably the top of my list.
It is surprising to see Genetics get this Terra, given how strong Earth and Fury can appear to be.
Zero's
going to be forced out of the purification feed. Some nice poke damage coming in response. Seemed as though Genetics was originally going to be pressured, but table turn that easily in favor of the Camelot Kings, and now Big Man Team's Genetics, they just gonna take the left side mid Harpies for free.
This Conduit Gem Chronos Pendant out of the Giannis is doing a lot of damage and getting a lot of cooldowns for Variety. Stuck in place, Johnny jumps in, wins the Shamash, will keep Variety locked in place, doing everything that he can, but the assist from Emil with the blind makes it impossible for him to get away, and Ducky is the one who gets the credit for the kill.
Heads up play as well from Ducky, forcing that driving strike earlier on. I understand it. Variety, he's just trying to be the totem harvester for the Camelot Kings. Probably getting yelled at by Big Man Tings about it over there in mid. We all know how much mids love their totem of Q there, J-Mac, but the punish, I think, is something that Variety might take into a little bit more consideration now after the fact, because it didn't seem as though Johnny was going to have that much burst, but you'd be surprised at how much follow-up damage a Xing 10 can actually produce.
Traditionally from the Gilgameshes, we see a more attack speed focused start, things like Iqbal, Stone Cutting Sword, even going maybe in towards the Mace Tree for something like a Jotuns or a Crusher that gives some attack speed, but Johnny's gone for a Transcendence first item instead, just going for a little bit more raw power.
I could be wrong in this. Maybe our designated stats guy Goremizer can figure it out for me. But I have to hold that thought. Johnny with a nice little aggressive pushback onto Captain Twig has accrued himself a slight level lead here, but it's still the Kings being a little extended into that Valhalla Valkyries jungle, trying to see if they could find a pick-punish moment up against this Gilgamesh.
And big man Tings, he'll be safe with the Giannis. Captain Twig. Blinked past by Johnny. Zeros on the bottom side of the map, trying to cut off the path for them. Genetics gets spotted, and he'll be forced back towards his tower. Meanwhile, Captain Twig ran the opposite direction, and now Ducky has made his rotation. Genetics in danger, stuck against the wall. Went to Shamash, and the Whirlwind will be thrown. Genetics is still alive for the moment until Rapper puts him in the dirt. Zeros up in the ultimate, looking for anything that he can, but Variety is in the middle of 4, just trying to get back to the portal that big man has set him, and luckily, he will be able to make it back.
Surrounded and collapsed on to the fullest extent there. Camelot Kings just drastically outnumbered, and I don't even think they realized it, but 2 separate 2 versus 4 engagements, and they just did not have the appropriate measures to respond in time. Captain Twig even having to expend that Lord of the Afterlife means that Valhalla Valkyries can probably continue to play aggressive into the Camelot Kings jungle, and I think the Genetics just had a little bit more faith in the damage output after the fact, because he'd already expended his dash on the Terra and still chose to reinitiate, just get a nicer than Fury on everyone from the Valhalla Valkyries. But Valk's just playing a little bit uncharacteristically aggressive right now around the mid lane here.
And I think that's the big thing, is the mid lane. Usually they've been pushing their lead towards Ducky from the solo lane, but allowing Zeros to be a part of these kills. Now, 2 assists under his belt, has the first stack of his Charon's coin because of it. It's allowing him, it's allowing Johnny to stay in it. Unfortunately, he's going up against Giannis, so big man Tings is just naturally going to be able to pick up a little bit of farm easier. We saw him earlier invade back camps at, like 6 minutes into the game, such is the nature going up against the Giannis. But yeah, seeing him put so much favor towards these mid lane skirmishes, as I said, maybe a little uncharacteristic for this phase of Johnny.
But I do think it's also maybe smart to actually try and utilize Zeros with this Raijin damage early on. Same thing for Fafnir. I mean, Draconic Transformation and that Cobra's damage alone was nearly enough to kill Variety had he not had those Giannis portals from the through space and time right next to him to get him back into safety. But still kind of just sending a message, I think, to the Camelot Kings that, hey, it's not going to be a total freebie to just waltz around the jungle doing as you please.
Genetics going to get vision, seeing the purple buff go down, as well as seeing the greater scorpion fall, so not going to be able to attempt to steal either of those. It's a little too far away for both options available, but Genetics sitting a little bit behind in experience. Been doing a lot of roaming around the map. That earlier death early on didn't help him out either, but sitting about a level and a half under Raffer. Meanwhile, Ducky just going to go ahead and proxy behind the tier 1 tower. It's early enough in the game. It's already 10 minutes. Might as well go for it. Captain Twig and Variety not happy about it, but they just can't really do anything to him.
Hey, but where Genetics might be suffering a little bit, Big Man Tings is actually prospering. A 1.5, 2 level lead, now starting to break away from this Raijin in mid. And despite the fact that it's been the Valhalla Valkyries playing more aggressive around their mid laner, I think that Big Man Tings has that mid to late game emphasis in mind, because I think the mid game is really where we're going to start to see the utilization of those through space and times and the heavier rotations coming out of the Camelot Kings. Right now, I kind of just feel like, you know, they're dipping their toes in the water, seeing what they can and can't get away with, and Valhalla Valkyries have definitely established the fact that, you know, that they'll honestly respond, and they've had great responses so far, but at the same time, it's definitely difficult to try and maintain that level of response against the global rotation assets like a Giannis.
And Malaysia's back, got stopped by Netroid, who's pushing up aggressively under the tower. Into the sky he'll go, looking for as many snipes, gets 2, needs the 3rd one, misses it, but he's got Genetics and Captain Twig is back up to try and chase him down. Luckily, Captain Twig can find those shots, able to get Emily2 under the tower.
And that's where it becomes a little bit more painful to be the Shivalanke. No point in even trying to utilize those purification beads. Emilito was dead to rights here from that Camelot King's aggression. And Netroid's got to be careful, though, not wanting to take too many shots from tower. And Johnny as well, finally having a chance to maneuver on over towards the duo lane, but the fight's already dissipated. Netroid is just going to take his back advantage. Good news for Emilito, though, since Netroid only got the assist, it won't really put him that much further behind in terms of experience and gold. It's more so just kind of an annoyance being sent back to base in that way.
Yeah, it looked like Johnny had walked over that blue ward just around the Gold Fury side, which is why Genetics was waiting for him. Had the wall ready to go as soon as Johnny stepped just a little too far forward. So nice play by Genetics, make sure that his Hunter gets out after a nice initiation, and getting Captain Twig a little bit further ahead, or trying to keep him at least toe-to-toe with Johnny on this Osiris, making sure that he can keep up with experience, keep up with gold as well. Purple buff taken away by Emilito and Raffer. Raffer will go back to base and start working towards his next item. Meanwhile, Genetics finally getting that Gauntlet of Thieves online, can finally start stacking that up.
The stack's definitely going to be beneficial towards the Terra and possibly even fairly detrimental against Wall of Valkyries. And yeah, Ting's already chunking
it's level 14?
with the unstable vortexes. Yes, I'm telling you, like
Giannis
Genetics has suffered, Ting's has prospered.
Giannis and mids are dumb. Like, that's all I'm going to say. They get, especially for a Giannis, of all the mages, Giannis in particular, because of, well, what you saw right there. He can go through a wall, so he can cut off all of the unnecessary pathing to get towards these back camps, to get towards experience and any other kind of buff. And that's why, for a while, we saw Giannis exclusively banned away. It wasn't just a hurry win ban, it was an SPL ban in general. And we're seeing a little bit of this resurgence of the Giannis, especially with this Conduit gem paired with it. I don't know, maybe we'll start seeing some more Giannis bans in the future.
Maybe, but I think with the likes of Tiamat, Raijin, even Baba Yaga has definitely started to rise a little bit more in the preferences, just because of the burst damage. But I think the primary reason why we're seeing Giannis here today for the Camelot Kings is just because Valhalla Valkyries have struggled the most, I think, at just being together. They don't tend to always be on the same page. And I think this might actually be a great showing of them really playing through each other for once. And I get where it can be difficult for them to accomplish that as well. Again, the primary reason being, we have 5 different players on 5 varying levels of EU ping. It is very difficult to play at this level.
Captain Twig has caught up to Johnny in experience at least, and Big Man Tings continues to grow his lead from the mid lane, sitting top of the experience charts for everybody on the map. Genetics gets stunned by Raffer. Johnny looking for any further aggression. Immediately, Genetics will throw a wall. Zeros goes into the ultimate, but Captain Twig is re-rotated back towards this mid lane, feared away by the final beat of the drum. Tings throws the ultimate, but not going to find anything further from it. Captain Twig walks through the portal, but nothing much further from there. Raffer tosses asunder and forces Draconic Transformation to get away from the stun from Captain Twig, but he'll fall through a portal, fall through the walls, take some damage, but Netroid is now rotated over, looking for Zeros on the tower. He's blinded, so he can't see too many targets available. Raffer will go down. Second shot will get it. Looking for the third will hit him. Emilito, who's also rotated across, but the Odysseus bows are starting to bounce between Genetics. All the while, still alive throughout all of this. Johnny has to use the bead, so he doesn't fall through the portal. Captain Twig blinks over, still looking to hunt down Johnny. Inevitably, looks like he will fall. Stun comes through, an unstable vortex.
Unfortunate for Johnny that before that last year's game, the fight isn't over yet. Variety with a blink punishing Zeros, trying to get away with that back under tower. Still had his ultimate available, and there is nothing worse than just having that boulder crashing down on top of you. Valhalla Valkyries looked as though they were out for blood here in mid, J-Mac, but it's actually Camelot Kings who turned things around entirely. And it wasn't even through Giannis rotations. It was just great heads-up play from both of these side lanes out of the Camelot Kings, understanding, hey, this is our opportunity to shine.
Both teams just said, hey, let's have an arena game in the mid lane for just a moment. Let's see how things go. Unfortunately for the Valkyries, they come up empty-handed in that fight and end up losing 3, almost 4 in response for it. I think Emilito is just able to squeak by, but Camelot Kings with a big 3 pick, able to take down Johnny, Zeros, and Raffer. By the way, Netroid hit that blind still. He was still blinded in the air and was able to hit Raffer.
Well, you do get better vision from Rom in comparison to a lot of other characters. It's not by much, but is a little bit better. That's not to take away, though, from Netroid and his accuracy. I think that Astral Barrage could not have been better placed. The target focus was also very smart out of him, but I think the main thing that fight highlighted, though, and it's so unfortunate the Valhalla Valkyries, because I just finished saying, yeah, this is the first time that we're really seeing them start to play a little bit more together and through each other, and then we just see 3 separate engagements take place, but that's also credit to the Camelot Kings for just driving them all over the place.
Zero speed's burned by Genetics. Raffer gets shoved back into 3 thanks to the help of Variety falling through the portal. Has to use the ultimate immediately in response. Boulder comes through and the tap is enough damage with the help of Genetics to take him down. Captain Twig ults in place, looking for anything. Johnny kicks him right back into the winds just to shove him away from the team. The Camelot Kings get 1.
That with Variety having rotated back into mid and that pick onto Raffer, Valhalla Valkyries won't be able to defend this Gold Fury. They're going to instantly start heading towards this Pyromancer, but Variety Genetics, they're not going to let them take that one for free either.
Johnny kicks him against the wall. Zeros goes to the Taiko Drums looking for some damage against Variety, but the snipes from Netroid are slamming into Emilita. Ducky gets one big pull with this ultimate, able to get one. Variety falling low. Johnny and Ducky looking to turn this one around and take him down. Johnny picks up the double kill, and Ducky's still looking for more under the tower. Roots Netroid in place. Johnny and Ducky both trying to take him down. Ducky taking up the tower for the team, but they're ultimately not able to take down the Hunter.
Nice relic usage there from Netroid to stay alive, but not so that the Valhalla Valkyries are healthy enough to actually get anything after the fact. Sure, it's nice to get a nice shutdown onto Ting's farming, given the fact that he's already 2 levels still ahead of Zeros, but Variety, Ting's traded out for relatively next to nothing here for the Valhalla Valkyries. It just kind of looked cool for them. I think that what would be better suited here is for the Valhalla Valkyries. I mean, I like the response, don't get me wrong. Camelot Kings definitely being a little over aggressive there. They just took the Gold Fury, and instead of backing and prioritizing that, they were just dead set on stopping the Valhalla Valkyries in their tracks on this Pyromancer.
Captain Twig gonna try and stop the second attempt at the Pyromancer. He'll walk into the Fire Giant pit and actually cause a little bit of aggro to be thrown his way. Pyromancer back for the Valhalla Valkyries. They're gonna try and take this one away, but Captain Twig steals it with the flail. Winter Shamash dropped. Captain Twig thrown into the midst of it. Raptor goes up into the dragon form, looking for anything, but Twig has been signaled out by Ducky and Johnny. Raptor gets the credit for the kill. Variety stunned. Variety in danger. He'll have to use his sleep. Luckily, he's got the portal to get through. Might be just enough for him. Zeros goes in the ultimate looking for one drum is all he needs, and he will find it.
That's a tough one. I feel like we could tell Zeros was sweating there for a second as to whether or not he'd be able to connect to those Taiko drums, but another great punish from the Valhalla Valkyries. It's so unlucky that they weren't able to actually confirm that Pyromancer in their favor, but if they can continue just suppressing the front line here for the Camelot Kings, J-Mac, Kings might even be playing a little bit with fire here, because that Valhalla Valkyrie squad was nearly capable of taking that Fire Giant outright with the 2-pick advantage.
The Valhalla Valkyries are doing this while still down 3,000-4,000 gold. Those last 2 fights going very well for them. Again, fighting 3,000 plus gold down, but fighting like they're 3,000 plus ahead, and a lot of that thanks to Johnny and Ducky, the team's kind of front line for them. Even though Johnny's going this more damage-oriented route, him and Ducky have just been bullying big man Tings. They've been bullying Genetics and Variety. Captain Twig, the unfortunate one to get caught in the middle of all of that action in the last fight, but I love what Johnny's been able to do on this Gilgamesh. We've seen the Loki banned away from him so many times that now he doesn't even care about the Loki. Teams have stopped banning it because they're not worried anymore with it, so now he gets to try his hand at some of these other big hitters.
Just a lot more team fight orientation from this Valhalla Valkyries draft in comparison to some of the more pick-based drafts that we've seen from them in sets past, but more importantly, J-Mac, I think that the Camelot Kings maybe not respecting the damage output out of this Valhalla Valkyrie squad, because they keep expending so much just to delay, but they're not as grouped up as the Valhalla Valkyries are during a lot of these challenges, and that's why we keep seeing the likes of Twig getting picked, Variety getting picked.
Variety trying to pick somebody, but doesn't grab anything on the tail end of it. So, for now, the Valhalla Valkyries will be safe under their Tier 1, unless Genetics and Captain Twig have something different to say. Genetics will end up missing that wall, and it's now Variety versus Johnny in the jungle. Ducky roots Netroid in place, but Monolith thrown down to give Netroid a little bit of extra safety, not just with the healing, but also with the protections. Variety gets the pluck, but unfortunately, a little bit of geometry clips Zeros, and he doesn't get pulled back.
Variety still wanting more, gonna
Twig
extend that boulder, but it's Genetics with the dive, blink in the Earth and Fury onto all 4 and eat that T1 tower. Now Ducky spin to win, but grabs nobody.
Variety's gonna shove Raffer to the back. Netroid gets 2 snipes, and that's all he needs to take down the Hunter. So far, 1-0 for the Camelot Kings. looking for more. Ducky gets picked up after falling through the portal, but no further push. Meanwhile, speaking of a push, Johnny shoves Captain Twig against the wall so that the way the rest of the Camelot Kings can start surging to this Tier 1 tower. Unstable Vortex just misses Zeros. The Tier 1 tower will fall.
Twig still chasing down Johnny. Lord of the Afterlife expended into the dropkick. Wins and Shamash now coming out. Johnny might have just bought himself an escape route. Meanwhile, Twig, he could be in real danger here with Ducky right behind him.
Ducky so close to taking him down. Johnny jumps in aggressively. The flail comes, or the tether comes out, and that's more than enough for Captain Twig to be able to get away. The backstep by Ducky buys just enough time for the blink. But all the while, Taco, they were baiting that fight in the jungle so that way they could keep that Tier 2 tower as their primary target for the Kings, and they're able to take that one down. Another 1,500 gold in their pockets pushes that gold lead to now nearly 6,000, and they're not stopping there. Right to the Primal Fury they'll go.
And Genetics more than capable of tanking this up. Netroid has plenty of shred now, especially with that Silver Branch proc off of his second ability from Steroid. And, well, J-Mac, like you just said, it's just going to be another extension forward for the Camelot Kings in terms of gold and experience. And not only that, but I know Twig almost died, but the fact that he was able to zone the attention of 2 separate members of Valhalla Valkyries throughout that entire segment of aggression in mid, it's definitely bad news bears here for the Valhalla Valkyries because they need to stay grouped. That is one of the main things that teams will look to do is create separation through the likes of Giannis and Terra. And if the Camelot Kings just keep reproducing those zoning scenarios here, it's going to be real difficult for Valhalla Valkyries to stop the Kings from getting more objectives.
Captain Twig drop kicked against the wall, but has the Lord of the Afterlife to escape, but not before he loses half of his health in the process. No relics were available to him as he used them up during the last engagement, so luckily that CC chain didn't last too long. He was able to make his way out. But looking at the builds across here, Captain Twig's gone for a little bit tankier of a route. Berserker Shield and the Talisman of Energy. Meanwhile, for Johnny, he's going very Glass Cannon style with mostly just damage, a little bit of protection thanks to the help of the Wing Blade, but he's still very squishy.
Valhalla Valkyries, though, all grouped up. Rapper going to get plucked, but will be able to jump out from the driving strike. Blinking from Ducky. He's looking for Captain Twig.
Captain Twig gets knocked up by Ducky. Ultimate thrown him right into the backside. Genetics tries to block him with the wall, but unsuccessful. Captain Twig with no relics, no ultimate. He's not going to make it out of there. Emilitu uses the Aegis, and the last shot from Netroid will not find him. Ducky low, Rapper low. He gets shoved right back into the middle of 5, and Netroid, the one to pick him up. Zero's running as fast as he can. Ting's just doing major damage to Ducky, and Zero's hook slam comes through. Roots 2 in place, but Variety still surging forward, looking for any aggression that he can find, or maybe even just looking for one good pluck. Through the wall goes Big Man Ting. Zero's just barely makes it away from that unstable vortex.
Variety, though, he doesn't care about Ducky having that root in place, but he's going to have to regroup with the rest of his squad. Camelot Kings maybe going a little too deep here, considering that Fire Giant's still up for grabs, but because of that chase, Valhalla Valkyries may have just bought themselves enough time. No, cancel that. Seems that the Camelot Kings still feel good enough to take out this Pyromancer at the very least, so a decent exchange, and one more time, Camelot Kings just continuing to find stuff after the stuff.
And that's the big important thing for him is, sure, Valhalla Valkyries were winning the fights earlier on, getting 2-3 picks and losing basically no one, but they weren't getting anything off the back. They weren't getting Tier 1 towers. They weren't getting Pyromancers, Gold Furies, or even Fire Giants like they're starting up here. Genetics at half, and Captain Twig walking back from the base. Genetics walks forward, eats the Raiju, and a lot of damage from it. Ducky gets a nice pickup on 2, throws him in the back. Zeros manages to pick him up through space and time from Big Man Tings. Looking for anything, but it's a triple dunk out of Captain Twig, looking for any escape route he has. Gets taunted back in with the Taiko drums towards the rest of the team. Captain Twig low, and Captain Twig falls. Double kill for Zeros.
Huge showing right now from Zeros. He is putting in the work on this Raijin, just completely facilitating so much of this map pressure. Ducky teleport back into the ward. Fire Giant not going to be fully committed to just yet. Valhalla Valkyries recognizing still some members of Camelot Kings hanging around that have been left alive. Variety could be in trouble, but it's Ducky who's getting melted.
Netroid in the sky looking for snipes, needs all 3 to take anybody down. Huge push by Variety, just sets up massive damage for Tings and Netroid. Able to get 2 instantly with the pick, and Big Man Tings looking for more, takes down Rapper for the double, and still with Ducky on the run, there's another chance for it. Ducky has the leap to get away, but how much further can he go? Big Man Ting has a lot of movement speed thanks to that threshold, and maybe they can just catch Ducky out.
Ducky, though, having already expended the blink, but blinking against a Giannis who can literally do that every few seconds. But Johnny right behind Big Man Team's going to try to kick him into the wall.
Nice
give him an
push.
opportunity to escape with the portal. Winter Shamas now being committed, but it's the Earth and Fury into that through space and time, and Johnny is gone with the boulder.
Variety just puts him down and says, don't ever try and attack my mid laner when I'm around. Beautiful push by Variety, shoves him away, forces Johnny to have to use the ultimate, but immediately in response, Genetic shows up, and Variety with the actual tail end there. And also just a huge ultimate by Big Man Ting. There's nearly 700 damage to Johnny. And we were talking about it earlier, John doesn't have a whole lot of defenses to his name, so he's eating a massive amount of damage back from that mid laner. And all of that sets up for the Fire Giant. Camelot Kings with the biggest neutral objective on the map around their waist.
It was almost so perfect for the Valhalla Valkyries as well, but the same issue that they've been having this entire game one so far, J-Mac, just continues to haunt them. They find the initial picks ahead of the Camelot Kings, but it's the Kings who hold on and buy just enough time for members like Variety to come up huge. I don't think that driving strike double catch could have been any more perfectly placed.
That was probably the best driving strike that we've seen from Variety. Not just this game, but one of the better driving strikes we've seen in general. He caught how many? 3 people with that push?
Necroid should have died. Every single day of the
100%.
He is just dead to rights, and the Kings just turn something out of nothing.
Big pick for them. Said it leads to the Fire Giant. Now, with the power play advantage, 3 minutes on the clock for the buff remaining. They've already stripped the second to last tier 2 tower off the map. Just one more in the dual lane side, and that's where the Kings will start shifting their attention as you see 4 players heading towards the left side of the map. Variety pushing up the mid as well as Captain Twig just to keep those lanes pushed forward so they can start setting up for those Phoenixes immediately after.
But what also sucks here for the Valhalla Valkyries is that Primal Fury doesn't even have to be a prime focus here for the Camelot Kings. They can just take their time, stripping away that final T2 tower, might even throw a little bit of pressure underneath this left side Phoenix just to see what they can grab. Whether it's successful or not, they still have that Primal they can fall back to.
Phoenix, they will go. Ducky looking for any pickup he can. Managed to get Big Man Tings, but a quick beat. Make sure that the mid laner can get away. That's the first ultimate of the fight. Expended is just Ducky's plus his blink, so that relic is now on cooldown as well. Johnny looking for a pick if he can, but gets spotted by Variety. Variety shoves him against the wall. Meanwhile, Genetics and Captain Twig at the front line under the Phoenix, but Netroid can't get any damage back. Instead, they're looking for Ducky. Snipes coming through. Needs the third one for the damage to kill him out. Doesn't find it, just off the mark. And now Zero's trying to turn the fight back on its head as Captain Twig is falling very low through space and time. Takes a lot of damage out of Johnny's health bar, but Johnny will make it back to the fountain.
All of the Valhalla Valkyries just scrambling into their base, trying to stay alive for as long as possible. Left side Phoenix, so having been taken out, means that the Camelot Kings now have their escape route, and so much expended just to escape in general here for the Valhalla Valkyries. They could be in real trouble.
Johnny and Ducky somehow barely made it out of that fight with just a sliver of health. Raiju doing a lot of damage to the frontliners as Captain Twig is well under half health and still surging forward are the Valkyries looking for anything that they can. Curse Stomp comes through. Gen X throws out the ultimate. Ducky with another whirlwind throws just Variety in the back, but he throws the boulder at 3, and Netroid punishes him, putting him in the dirt. Ducky down. 3 low. Johnny nowhere to be found amongst the fight. Genetics goes in, gets a stun on Zeros, and that's going to be his life taken out. Triple kill for Netroid. Emilitu narrowly avoids the Earthbreaker, and that looks like it's going to be a Titan push forward. Maybe Netroid just looking for more. Gets the Aegis from Emilitu. Netroid has to use the bead so he doesn't get shoved back in the fountain. But a Titan under half health. Through the portal goes Johnny, and it looks like the Valhalla Valkyries are going to close out, or Camelot Kings will close out game number 1 and put the Valkyries at a major disadvantage.
It was a little interesting there for a second from Netroid. I thought for a moment that he was actually going to die to the likes of Johnny and Emilito, looking for that fountain dive. Really wanted that quadra kill more than anything else, but have to respect the clean gameplay there from the Kings to close this one out. I think the Valhalla Valkyries might have been better suited just letting them back off here, but because they chose to try and punish the Kings having stayed for so long, it's just hard to fight into that sustain from Terra.
It's just a little too much for them, even with the help of the Cursed Donk. And you saw the Aegis expended just so that way he could deny that Quadra kill away from him. So Netroid unable to come up successful for the Quadra, but allows the Kings to come up successful for game 1. We'll take it back to the desk right after this break.
kids are crazy for? Cthulhu's. Start your morning madness with a bowl of morning happiness.
Cthulhu sale is ongoing now. You will take part. Save up to 33% off gem bundles. You will take part.
Crazy crispity. Crazy crunchity. Crazy
Select chests up to 50% off. You will take part. Boosters, avatars, wards, and more up to 50% off. You will take part. Party up with up to 3 times favor. Worshippers and XP. You will take part. This is your duty.
Crazy Cthulhu-y. Cthulhu. Surgeon General's warning, Cthulhu's are not of this world and should not be ingested by children or adults over the age of 80. Gems are not included as a prize because Cthulhu's are not real. Reality is meaningless, time is a construct. They not all hope when you ingest Cthulhu's. Use as directed, part of balanced breakfast. For the crispity, crunchity, crazy crunch, get cuckoo with Cthulhu.
You will take part.
Of a balanced breakfast.
Can we take a commercial break?
Man, our video team is just on an entirely different level, aren't they, Gormizer? Incredible commercial, Cthulhoops. But the big thing to remember is that there is a gem sale going on in-game right now. The Cthulhoops gem sale starting today, and that'll go on until September 6th. So if you got your eyes on some skins, now's the time to get in-game, pick up some of those gems. Cthulhoops, I don't think available at your local retailer, but gems probably the closest thing you can get.
You got gem sale out of that. I got, if you're 81... you can eat Cthulhoops, and also life is meaningless and time is a construct.
I did get that. There's something about me being in commercials where, like, I'm hypnotizing people. I'm in that chair ad where I get hypnotized.
You're doing it a lot lately.
I guess, just stare into my eyes, Gore, and you'll either want to buy a chair or some gems. Either one.
What if I buy a chair with my gems?
We should work on that. That's a good thought there, Gore Master. We'll work on
how
that.
How many gems translates to one maxonomic chair?
A lot of gems. We'll talk about game 1 here, though, and it just feels, and this is the hard thing about these Valkyries games, is because they come out of the gate hot, don't they, Gore? I mean, they start things off well. They receive some pressure basically all over the map. Look at this. I mean, they're up in kills, but they're behind in gold in a lot of these highlights, and that's the important thing to look at. And by the time that this game kind of hit mid-game, Gore, the Camelot Kings consistency really shone through.
I think that's exactly what it is, right? You get a good start from the Valkyries, which has been kind of, as of late, what they've been starting off. Very reminiscent of last year's Obey team, though, right? You start off with a decent lead, you're keeping things even, and then it just starts to get out of hand, usually around the 15-minute mark or any point after that, for sure. And this was just a good, clean game from the Kings. You could see, even though I think the team synergy maybe for the picks all around might have been there a little bit larger for the Valkyries, it didn't necessarily matter when it got to the actual team fight stage. Netroid just had himself a whale of a time, did not die, or at least at this point was 5-0-7. And they're just ramming through the Valkyries like it's nothing. And you had mentioned it, we were talking about it at the very beginning, but a lot of it is the setup, I would argue, not just from Genetics, who had 10 assists, but also Variety, who had so much to provide for that team just to make sure that Tings and Netroid could land easy damage.
There was that awesome highlight in the middle of that package there. It's a double push from Variety immediately into the damage from Big Man Tings. Felt like everyone was finding some level of setup here for the carries. It's almost like just the peak of Smite game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where every front line's doing the setup, your back lines are hitting their damage. 38,000 of it,
that's a lot,
by the way, for Netroid. Undying 707 in this game. And this is what you expect from the Kings, because this is not all that surprising when you think back to the Kings set even against the Bolts, where things started off slower. We're thinking, wow, the Bolts are just going to win this in the early game, but by the time the mid-game rolls around, things slow down a little bit. The Kings start to get their feet underneath themselves, and then their proactivity, their chemistry as a squad kind of shines through. It's exactly what happens here in Game 1. I want Netroid Gore to pick Rom here in this game, if for no other reason. Then I always reference 6 games because I'm using the SMITEProLeague.com website, and you can look at the player and their last 6 games that they've played, and now 5 are Rom, and then the last one, the 6th most recent game, is Chernobog. So one more Rom game, and it'll be a full screen of Rom here for Netroid. But you have to think about it now, Gore. That might not happen. If you're the Valkyries here, Netroid goes 7-0-7 on Rom. He's played it in 5 of the last 6 games. 6 out of the last 7 games, Netroid's gotten this Rom. In picks and bans for Game 2, are you taking the Rom away?
That's actually the question. It's way better than do they try to ban it? Because what do you not ban? Last time they banned Hell, they banned Tiamat, they banned Artemis. Are you going to let him play Artemis? He honestly might opt for the ROM over the Artemis at this point. And so that already seems like it's going to be a little bit shaky. But it was the Gilgamesh Raijin. Do you give up one of your top 2s in order to make your opposition slightly less comfortable? You had mentioned it as being, the last 6 of his games, right? But if you're going to go down the list, he's also widely successful on the Anhur. Played him 8 times so far this year. You go down even further, that's where it actually gets hard. I'm having trouble finding another Hunter. Chiron, way back when Chiron was happening. I mean, it's just he's getting so consistent at these maybe 2-3 picks that it doesn't really matter if you just ban one. He's going to have another one to go to.
I'm sure he loves winning because in the last 6 games, the Kings have won all of them.
Because they've been winning, yeah.
I wonder if it gets
think
boring.
everyone
Do you
loves
think
winning.
it's boring just
Dave,
winning?
what a nothing statement. Everyone loves winning, Dave.
No, but it's a 2-part statement. I'm sure he loves winning, but...
Okay.
I wonder if it gets boring if you're doing it on the same pick. He's just won all of his ROM games recently, right? I mean, it's just been a whole bunch of ROM. I wonder if he's tired of playing ROM.
Dave, I'm sorry I gave you trouble back there. that was a real funch moment.
Way back when you just
right there, like 2 seconds ago. Yeah, that one's on me. I should have let you finish your statement.
I should keep my sentences to individual statements.
Yeah.
And that'll avoid confusion in the future.
Exactly.
If I just make one clear-cut statement, then we won't have to worry about those sort of things in the future.
That was one compounded statement, though.
It was one compound.
It should have been, I should just make one clear statement, period. That way we don't have to worry about it.
Oh, man, I'm doing a poor job of it already. My goodness. Let's catch back up here with some of the bans, though. Gore, Hell taken away from Variety. No surprise there. Tiamat also taken off the table. Big Man Tings looks great on that pick. And I'm actually not all that surprised, Gore, by this Raijin ban here, because there were moments in that game where we saw Zeros have a great team fight, kept things interesting, found some good damage that game. And so it almost feels bad for the Valkyries where you get this one piece of your team fight that's working well, and now it gets taken away. But Johnny also looked good on the Gilgamesh.
He did look really good.
I don't hate returning to that.
I actually would prefer that. What was banned instead of the Raijin last time was the Fenrir. And I think I'd rather see the Gilgamesh again. I think Johnny, especially with the way this team is pivoted, you can go for these, I'm going to carry, I'm going to do it all by myself, put the backpack on.
Right.
It didn't work for the Valks for half the year so far, right? And so this last few weeks, they've been looking better, and it has been not trying to play explicitly through Johnny. Johnny has been able to get good kills. Johnny's been able to get good setup. He's playing a lot more like the rest of the junglers in the league. So the Gilgamesh makes sense. But now it's where do you go for Zeros? Because Zeros has been playing a whole lot of Raijin. And Zeros has been doing not a whole ton else. I mean, I guess their Neath has been picked up a ton for them, and he typically goes for that in mid, although Emilito has definitely been picking that up. Otherwise, after Raijin, you really have to shake it down. They've been let to have Tiamat a few times. They're banning that. So their mid pick is maybe the most important one to me, because it's going to have to pair up with that Gilgamesh well.
Yeah, Gilgamesh, Fafnir, similar, not similar, the exact same as what the Valkyries had as far as frontline goes. Different pick order. It was Gilgamesh, something else, and then Fafnir a little bit later on. It was Gilgamesh, Raijin, and then Fafnir. King's hovering Uller here. Again, purely for my own mental preference. I just want to see a full sheet of ROM played for Netrioid, but maybe when things are getting stale in the Hunter game, you throw out one of the more fun Hunters to play, and that's Uller. Not the case. So I will get some satisfaction here, as all 6 of the last games that Netrioid has played will have been on this ROM.
So is it more satisfaction if not just all 6 of them are ROM, but they're all 6 wins, or?
Yeah, that adds to it.
Okay.
Really, I mean, it's the fact. And if you
so you're rooting against the Valkyries. We got it right here.
If you go
featured SBL waiting room. We're putting it on there.
Nope, could be anyone. It could be anyone. It could be someone on the Valkyries playing all last.
Come on.
No, Gore.
Play with me.
I'm not giving you anything. At least not in that category. That is a sore topic, Gore. We're not going down that road. Fafnir and Izanami, because remember when Fafnir was drafted later on for the Valkyries, it was Raijin before this. Fafnir was the 3rd pick, and that gave the Kings the opportunity to ban out a Hunter against Emilito. And Izanami was that answer for the Kings in the ban phase. So maybe something that synergizes a little bit better with this Fafnir and the Iza.
Yeah, and honestly, it fits, at least in terms of where we've been seeing this tier list lately, a lot better than Xbalanque. Xbalanque was played by the Bolts a couple of times, and the Bolts looked okay with it for the most part. I think they went 2-2 in terms of games that they had played. The Izanami's been on the rise. She fits really well with the build right now, and I'm interested to see how well Emilito can pilot this, specifically against that ROM on the other side. That's where things get a lot more difficult, is taking on Netroid, because they weren't giving you any breathing room. I mean, you had said it, he was 7-0-7, and there's going to be the fun one. You have his last 6 games pulled up. When was the last time he died?
Oh, man. No, so here's the thing.
I should know that. I'm supposed to know that.
No,
but
I
I'm asking
pivoted
you.
off his last 6 games when we move forward. Well, no, the internet is great, and these Alienware PCs are super quick. He died. Unfortunately, he died literally the last game they played. Not against the Valks, but against the Solar Scarabs. He died once, but he was 7-1-6. Died twice in the first game. In the last 6 games, Netroid has died 8 times. And a couple of those games being 0-death games. So Netroid's been on an absolute hot streak. In my scrambling to pull up some stats here, Gore, an interesting pick has been locked in here. Zhang Kui is locked in here for the Valkyries. Not at a 0% win rate anymore.
No.
Still
he's not.
I'm not confident, though, in the increase for Zhang Kui.
His one win was a solo lane win, right, if I'm remembering correctly?
Yeah, I think it was the Bolts or the Dragons
it was fine,
that picked it against maybe one of the teams that was having a coach sub in that week. Not
2
sure.
wins.
But let's catch back up here, Gore. Zhang Kui and Ao Kuang picked for the Valkyries. That's a very Johnny pick, isn't it, the Ao Kuang? And then Zhang Kui alongside Izanami, Fafnir, Gilgamesh. So some late game picks paired with, a pick in the Zhang Kui that's harder to kill in the late game. Does this Valkyries composition give you some confidence?
No, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, Zhang Kui is 2-11 right now. I'm not going to be betting on him. I think that everything outside of that, I actually really love. I love Johnny on Ao Kuang. I love the Izanami. I love the Fafnir. I love the Gilgamesh. But in my mind, part of how they're successful is if Zeros is able to get in there.
Yep.
And I think there's going to be some merits to it. But also on the other side, there's a 100% win rate for the Khepri on genetics so far this phase. I mean, it's just this weird mashup where they're going really far. I was thinking Merlin first. I mean, there's a bunch of other mages that we've seen more successful played in that role. Maybe Zeros can shut me up. I actually invite it. I'd love to see this kind of composition win, but he's 2-11. I'm not going to vote for the Valkyries on that.
Gore, we're 1 for 1 on remakes. Why not make it 2 for 2? We got a remake here in this game. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we right into game 2.
tempo, tempo. Can you keep up with my tempo, tempo? Yeah, yeah, blowing up, C4. I just hit the Mike Jackson on my tiptoes. Oh yeah, I know we go wherever that wind blows. The endo. Don't slip on the drill. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the drill. High key, I know. I send all of my rap foes like they my tadpoles. Yeah, yeah. Blowing up, C4. I just had to go crack now on my Depot. Yeah, yeah, that Draco bustin' like free throws. I do not miss no shots, I got the cheat code. That's why I never lose. They can't predict my moves. I'm way too smooth, yeah. I just caught a groove, yeah. This right here, that Charizard, the fire in the booth, yeah. Had to go right back to it, yeah. If you ain't talking about money, please save your breath, don't bring it up to me, yeah. I pull up in that stunt like a 007 James Bond type movie, yeah. Hey, don't slip on the trip, no, 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 no. Don't slip on the trip, don't slip on the, don't slip on the. Don't slip on the trail. Tempo, tempo. You keep up with my tempo, tempo.
Appreciate the patience, everybody. Not to worry. We are very close to getting into game number 2 between the Camelot Kings and the Valhalla Valkyries. Gore is still with me to continue breaking down the fun draft that we've got here, Gore. A bit of a different pivot, though, for the Kings this time. Still Rom, still Osiris. Hey, still Hercules. That's good. Morgan Le Fay, though, is going to be a different look in the mid lane.
Yep.
As well as the Khepri for genetics. Bit of a different vibe from that Terra.
And it's going to change up a little bit of the play, I think, early on, and maybe in that mid game, just because what Giannis is able to provide. Like, Morgan Le Fay can't literally walk through walls. That tends to change at least a little bit, but the damage is still going to be there. And the Khepri, I think, is going to give more setup, maybe less setup than the Terra, but more survivability than the Terra, so it's kind of that trade-off that you toss with it. I will throw out there, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, that Genetics didn't have to ult a single time as Khepri in that one game, and he's won every game that he's played on it so far this phase. It just provides a lot for you. In lane, you get the shielding, which is something that is easy to overlook. He's got a good pluck. We saw in the SCC earlier at First Blood because of Khepri grab. It's just going to be how well, I guess specifically, Fafnir can peel for it. Khepri dashing forward gets stopped real easily by a hammer.
Yeah, what a weird world where you pick Khepri. The res is an awesome piece of utility to have. And then you don't use it. You're rooting and plucking and sending out little waves of damage and buff the entire game, and that's it. I want to ult someone, right? But if the Kings play the way they did in the last half of game number 1, could be a run back here for Genetics. We'll have to keep a Scarab's Blessing counter on for this one. Camelot Kings, Valhalla Valkyries, game number 2 starts right now.
I'm excited for this one, Taco, not just because, we get to watch more Smite, but because Johnny is going back to his all-time signature pick of the Ao Kuang for the jungle. Again, J-Mac Tucker and Best Taco joining me. Doug, as our observer for the day and for this game.
I think normally I would be a lot more excited for this OG Johnny pickup if it wasn't for the fact that I feel like it was such a forced pick for Johnny just because they wanted some form of response for Genetics taking that Khepri earlier on. And I think it's a pretty tough position for Johnny to now be in, because when you have a Zhang Kui as your mid laner, typically you want to try and complement that by having a pick that I think can prioritize sort of corralling the members of the Camelot Kings more together. But I think that the issue that I have here with AO is you want to play flank and for the backline, but you also need to try and be a centerpiece for setup in general for your mid laner, and I'm just not sold on the fluidity of this draft right now for the Valkyries.
Maybe a bit of an answer to try and get some of that burst magical damage. While Zhang Kui, not necessarily known for his big burst earlier on, can get some as the stage goes on, but Ao Kuang can fit that boot if you need a big chunk of magical damage thrown at somebody really quickly by way of that Wildstorm and the Dragon Call. We'll see what he's able to do in this first game. He's already making strides against big man Tings, but hasn't gone for the Dragons just yet. Instead, has that Water Illusion for his second ability.
Also want to keep an eye on Genetics here and how he fares up against this Emilito-Raffer combination of the Izza and Fafnir. Something to keep in mind, if he catches Izza with that root, even if she dashes away, she'll still be rooted in place for a second or two. So that's definitely something Emilito will have to be cognizant of as team fights start breaking out and he approaches that stage. There's a chance that the Camelot Kings, with the amount of side lane pressure they've opted for here, J-Mac, just might run away with this one early on.
Zero seats a sigil and puts him a little bit low. Emilito gets rooted in place by the Khepri, and Netroid just needs one follow-up basic to do the job. That'll be first blood going the way of the Kings and maybe a little more. But luckily for Johnny, he's able to get back to the safety of the tower thanks to that Water Illusion.
I'm not gonna say I can see the future, because I think that just comes down to raw analysis of drafts in general. But Variety, a little bit of trouble here up against Ducky on this Gilgamesh. Hercules not gonna be as much of a bully, I'd imagine. Netroid, on the other hand, though, he's looking to bully Raffer.
Raffer falling low, the Rising Dawn doing a lot of tick damage to him, but not quite enough to pop him down to kill threshold, and unwilling to dive under the tower as well to try and secure that kill. So luckily for Raffer, he'll get to live to see another day, but gets sent back to the base very low and unable to pick up that Gauntlet of Thieves just a little too early for that back.
Emilito's trying to give chase now, but he has to clear this wave first. That's going to give the opportunity for Genetics and Netroid to invade the purple buff, since Raffer had to pull away earlier on, but doesn't seem as though Camelot Kings are really to full commit just yet. Might have assumed that there was going to be a further rotation out of the Valhalla Valkyries there, and from not being one of the best hunters for buff confirmation earlier on, unfortunately having to forfeit that slight invade pressure, but taking the small harpies, still something for the Camelot Kings.
Look at this response to Johnny's Ao Kuang, and maybe just the CC in general that Valkyries hold. Maybe hold that thought. No, it's looking still fine for it, but in response to the CC and the potential with the execute, how you can beads away from this execute, the only one in the game you're able to do so for it. 5 sets of purification beads picked up by the Camelot Kings, try and deal with that, deal with some of the CC that Ducky and Raffer also provide.
Yeah, if it wasn't difficult enough already for Johnny to try and pilot this Ao Kuang, having to deal with a Khepri using purification beads is only going to make the matter that much worse here. And not only that, but I think that the Astral Barrage from Netroid as well could be really instrumental here in terms of just taking Johnny out of that hidden combat phase, because Johnny, much like Emilito, even when they go for those invis escapes, it's still fairly telegraphed as to which direction they are headed, and that can be revealed pretty easily from up in the air.
One adaptation you do see because of this now Tropical Magic 3v3 coming from the Valkyries is Genetics has opted for a Heart Ward Amulet as his first item, opting just for straight magic defense, a little bit of MP5 along with it, but recognizing you're going up against 3 magic, why worry about a sovereignty? Why worry about physical protection this early in the game?
I mean, you know Emilito is going to be locked down to that dual lane. The same could be said for Ducky, so with neither of the physical components really going to make any appearances anytime soon to these mid-team fights. We saw a lot of them in Game 1, at least. The Valhalla Valkyries and the Camelot Kings kind of just slugging it out back and forth there in mid. So if Game 2 is anything like the last one, that Heart Ward is definitely going to be a nuisance for Zeros and Johnny to really capitalize on any picks.
Genetics is tanky enough that hammer from Raffer couldn't even clear the shield from him. Actually, looking through, there was still a Hand of Gods available for Raffer, so he could secure that red buff nice and safely as Genetics walked up trying to put some pressure and maybe try and steal away. But it is a Khepri. It's a little tough as a Khepri to steal really anything away.
You'd be surprised though. It's always when you least expect it that little dot tick damage actually manages to take it away. It does apply a slight bit of pressure though, just because Camelot Kings, they still have the timer at least on that red buff, so it's not like the Valhalla Valkyries are feeling too great about it. And Raffer, I'm not sure if he held on to that hog or if he might have even bought that anticipating that the Camelot Kings would try to pressure out these early red buff respawns.
Well, he did put a lot of pressure towards purple buff earlier on, maybe not so much with the red, so maybe you're right. It was potentially a response to try and deal with some of those invades, but had to use it at the red buff just because Genetics was stepping a little far forward. Luckily for them, they had it, so they can secure the red and make sure that Zeros gets as much pressure as possible in mid lane with this Zhang Kui. As mentioned on the desk, his only win so far has been solo lane with Fine OK. Haven't seen really any success with
You mentioned there was another Zhang Kui victory, but
I think it was also a solo.
Could have potentially been. I personally can't recall which team managed to make it happen because you just don't see Zhang Kui winning too often. But I still stand firm. Zhang Kui has a lot of potential.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sold that this is his moment to shine. Zero seems ready to go in.
See if he can get it here. Genetics down to half health. Captain Twig able to get away from the team fight for now, and the sigil used for a slow from Big Man Tings to zone them away and make sure that his teammates can get out of there safely. All sets of beads still available for the side of the Camelot Kings as no heavy CC thrown towards them, just a lot of damage.
But look at the pressure that Netroid has right now in dual lane. The fact that he was able to hover mid, take away those oracles, fairly uncontested. Now Melito wanting to get a little bit more aggressive, recognizing that he's got Raffer rotating in. A good steal of the Harpy there from Netroid, but Melito still at a slight experience disadvantage. Raffer now looking to give Camelot Kings a taste of their own medicine. Well, he'll be unsuccessful in trying to find that hammer toss strike for the confirmation on Netroid purple buff. Still, I think that it says a lot that the Valhalla Valkyries are still trying to play around Zeros this early on in mid lane.
And it's maybe something they have to do for, because as we mentioned, Zhang Kui hasn't had the most success as a god in the SPL, one of the lower winning ones of as far as games played to #1. It's not like, you know, they only played 2 and we lost half of them, low win rate for it. Probably one of the lowest win rates, and so you need to do a little bit extra. But one thing that I know Aggro and I talk a lot about with it is when you want to play this Zhang Kui, you're playing into a Sunder meta, so it's never fun. Never fun to get Sundered as soon as you attempt to get to the backline. But without Blink and Aegis, it's hard for him to not only get to the backline, but to survive once he does get to that backline. It's going to be a hard game for Zeros, so I like the mentality of the Valkyries to try and play around and maybe get him to that point to where he can just walk to the backline.
I'd be skeptical to see Zeros try and attempt to pick up the Blink in this one, though, J-Mac. I think he's going to need that Aegis in the secondary slot, but understanding that early on, even though Sunder can be detrimental, it's not like... I think the AO pick does force Camelot Kings into going the 5 purification beats like we've already seen. And Genetics looking to punish Johnny with Captain Twig.
Captain Twig getting a lot of damage against Johnny. He'll pop a potion, but he's got 3 surrounding him, able to get his own blink just because he avoided enough damage. Raffer into the dragon, looking for a stun, only finds Genetics. Captain Twig's low, Zeros rotates through, and the Ghosts are doing quite a bit of damage. Captain Twig gets a nice revive available. Execute is up for Johnny, but the beads are still available for Captain Twig. Instead, it's Variety who manages to find the first kill of the fight. Zeros goes down, boulder tossed by Variety, looking for any target. Now Raffer low in mana and de-transforming. He is a sitting duck and falls down. Variety picks up the double.
Johnny, though, still on the hunt here for Captain Twig. Could potentially even look towards Genetics. He's just hovering from behind everyone. Gonna invest into the watery illusion. A little low, but it's a nice driving strike from Variety, and Johnny might be dead to rights here. Snipes coming through from Netroid as well. Johnny's still on the run.
Gets put back up and put back in the dirt as Variety picks up his 3rd kill of the game now on a killing spree. A nice attempt there by Netroid. I like the shots for the snipes, but just a little bit off the mark, and Johnny, well, he at least stole the Scorpion away, so a little bit of benefit for him.
All he wanted to do was apply some damage onto Genetics, execute, and get out. But Variety, peel monster this set so far. He just refuses to let the Camelot Kings die whenever he's around.
I was really surprised that they let Netroid get the ROM again. As the desk mentioned, he's now 6 games straight that he's played, and I believe he's won every one of those games that he's gotten it. Variety, after a killer performance in game number 1, I mean, that huge push by the back Harpy camp near the later stage of the game was disgusting. So I'm surprised that they just allowed so many of the same gods back through in this second game, and that this was their further response to it, to go with the Zhang Kui and to go with the Sao Kuang.
I think the problem is the Camelot Kings, they know that Netroid is a nuisance with the ROM. They know how strong their AC is, they have full faith in him, and they're willing to prioritize picking it super early on. Rapper might get picked here in the mid lane. It's going to be Zeros joining the fray now, trying to buy some time, but ultimate expended and no one caught out.
Lord of the Afterlife used, as well as Zero's ultimate sigil hits 2, and then the Wildfire immediately afterwards. Not quite enough damage to take down Zeros. He does avoid the Dragonflight. Johnny gonna get some nice return damage back against Big Man Tings. A lot of skirmishing happening in the jungle, but nobody falls just yet, and no relics needed to be burned. Well, Variety had to burn his beads on this right side going up against Ducky.
He's just looking for the quick clear, gonna expend that boulder for good measure so he can head on back to base faster, but Ratatouille Divine as well rushed there from Zero, so it's definitely evident the Valhalla Valkyries understand some of the shortcomings that they have. Memolito, on the other hand, he might be dead to rights here. Nice escape, though, and it's going to be Camelot Kings just letting that one go. A nice juke out there from Memolito. Thought for a second that he'd be caught out, but this purple buff is not guaranteed just yet. 3 members still hovering from the Kings.
You saw Genetics just barely off the mark, not only with that root, but with the Rising Dawn from hitting the target that Emily2 dashed towards. Izanami dash much faster than it used to be, still somewhat telegraphed, not nearly to the same degree that something like a Neath backflip would be, but some people can be pretty good at tracking that dash. Luckily for Emily2, they weren't able to. He was able to make it out just fine inside that jungle.
Camelot Kings are also with a decent lead so far. They don't really need to compromise themselves chasing down this Izanami, because the last thing you want to do is give an opportunity for a late game composition like what the Valkyries have opted for to have a chance to actually get a surgence early on. Johnny with this AO specifically, you just never really know where he's going to be on that.
Genetics stunned out of the dash, and that'll be a fight for the mid. Harpies concluded. The big sigil from Big Man Tings. Notice he's playing almost assassin style with this Morgan Le Fay, waiting around corners, seeing who's going to walk around the corner, who's going to try and make a cheeky play. But Big Man Tings coming up level 13 so far, not the highest level in the game like he was last time around with that Adonis, but still sitting near top of the charts with the rest of his team. Level 14 Variety, level 13 for Netroid. And really, as far as leads go, most of it is in that solo, but hold that as Genetics gets a lot of damage pumped into him. Zeros uses his ultimate. Genetics still walking away, and we haven't seen an opportunity for Johnny to try and go for that execute yet.
Valhalla Valkyries not even getting an opportunity to force the purification beads out of Genetics. That's the main thing that they've got to worry about first. It's not even that Scarab's blessing, because Genetics can hold that all day long as he has those purification beads available. And if Johnny is not perfect timing on that execute, it does not matter anymore. And AO, I think, just would lose a lot of his value if the Valhalla Valkyries continue to struggle and even forcing the purification beads.
Pyromancer started by the Kings, and they'll be able to take that one down relatively quickly, but Ducky blinks into the back line looking for something, doesn't find the Pyromancer. That goes the way of the Camelot Kings, but Ducky being attacked by Variety, he gets the pickup and the push as well. Gets the purification beads from him. A little surprised, but Ducky may just be a little worried of what could have been waiting for him afterwards.
Oh man, Netroid is out for blood here up against Emilito. Emilito secures his purple buff, but the challenge, and the constant challenges, as I say, from Netroid are giving him a slight edge in this dual lane, because he's clearing and then immediately looking to apply pressure, and so much of the Valhalla Valkyries' attention has shifted towards this mid-solo side of the map that Netroid, he's really just free to be as extended as he wants.
Emily2 does have a little bit of an experience lead, so that is helping him, but as mentioned, he can't really do anything with it. Netroid is just keeping him at bay, making sure he can't push too far into the lane, making sure he can't even really walk into the jungle. I mean, by this point last game, both these hunters were able to rotate to these mid-fights, but so far, it's looking like only Netroid has had that opportunity to make any kind of rotation. We saw it to try and snipe Johnny earlier at the Scorpion, but ever since then, been relatively quiet for these two hunters. Looking through across the build, Silver Branch is done for Netroid, where Flipside Emilitu going into this Balance Blade tree.
And I think what I'm noticing the most between these two comps, actually all that Netroid up until the Astral Barrage, just trying to buy time for the rotations to come through from Camelot Kings, and Emilito could be in some real trouble here.
Third snipe does hit Emilitu. Captain Twig picks up Netroid a little bit low, but now Johnny's on the run, gets caught out of the stealth immediately by Variety. Boulder comes through, and Netroid gets one more basic to put him down. 6 on the board for the Camelot Kings, and maybe looking for more, at least looking for this Gold Fury.
And Ducky, he's made the rotation all the way over from solo as well to match that out of Variety, but it might be too little too late. Without his blink being available, it's not like he can actually try and aggress into this Gold Fury. And the Valhalla Valkyries, they lose 2, they lose the gold and the map pressure, as well as gold experience, and leads in general just continue to go in favor of the Kings.
And not a single worry coming from Netroid. He burns the Aegis, yes, somewhat necessary for it, but speeds are still up. Genetics still hasn't fired an ultimate yet. We're now 16 minutes in the game, and we haven't seen a single solo Scarab's Blessing
Well, he
thrown.
did have one. He had one earlier on, and...
Okay, so he's got 1 in 16 so far in time. Not looking so hot for it, and purification beats have almost always been up for these players. Netroid, or Emilitu. This has happened to him before, where teams get a little bit of a lead and they just bully him back. As soon as he comes back to lane, he's already sent back.
I don't even know if this is safe for Raffer to still be hanging around. Captain Twig is looking extraordinarily healthy right now with this Osiris. Netroid Genetics, they really want that T1 tower in duo, but they'll fall back for the time being. Netroid has 2,600 gold in hand, quite literally an entire item depending on what he wants to buy next. And could be looking after the Chinsai, so now he's got more than enough in hand if he wishes. Raider Scorpion gonna be his next form of appeal, and well, J-Mac, I think it just keeps going from bad to worse here in Emilito's case. Something I wanted to kind of pull up earlier, the big difference between these two drafts is Camelot Kings have way better consistency in terms of crowd control lockdown that is more likely to force purification beats in comparison to that of Valhalla Valkyries.
Raider Scorpion will fall down. Camelot Kings get the credit for that, so they'll enhance the buffs on both sides of the map because they did manage to take both. Ducky can't get the drop kick through because Variety shoves him against the wall, and Ducky will push back against him and say, well, let me try and use some of my CC. Johnny, level 15 on the Ao Kuang, uses the water illusion to get away. Variety chasing the wrong direction, will not manage to find Johnny, so a nice little stealth out for him. Gen X gets a route just onto Zeros and Tier 1 tower under siege. Variety going for some big plucks if he can, but not going to find anything else on the backside.
And Johnny, he's trying to hunt, but it's going to be tough getting behind this Camelot Kings draft. Raffer trying to go forward under that Winds of Shamash, but Variety, he's just taking out these T2 tower shots, no problem. Meanwhile, Captain Twig just chases Johnny into his death.
That's a big solo kill on the jungler, and no further follow-up from Johnny. Didn't even use the ultimate to try and push him away. Tier 2 tower falls. Raffer gets caught by Genetics instantly. Luckily for him, he's got the lead. The wildfire is good, but the boulder is even better. An extra ult just for good measure from Netroid to make sure he gets put down.
It was really just a matter of who was going to kill Raffer first. Emilito all the while just trying to see for some
Zeros.
gold. Zeros without that ultimate available. There's no demons that he can try and utilize for his favor. 18.5 minutes, and we're going to see the first Phoenix fall here of the game. And honestly, that might have been the Camelot Kings doing a favor to the Valhalla Valkyries, because now that mid lane Phoenix has been forced down, at least they can rely on the consistent trickle in of those fire minions for farm, but this is getting pretty tough now. Ducky, sad. Just sad.
That's just a feels bad moment for it. Driving strike just to get away from the drop kick, and you saw Variety, he saw Ducky walk up, he talked to him and said, hey man, how's it going? You want the speed buff? Nah, too bad. It's mine here. So Variety picks it up, gets a steal, and I think you said it best. Feels bad.
It's just like, you want to help. You really do. But poor Ducky, man, he's just not going to be able to do it alone. I mean, even when it comes to the speed buff in general, I just, again, don't really think that the Valhalla Valkyries really did themselves justice with some of the components of this composition. It just seems very comfort pick oriented as opposed to trying to play around each other, but again, sometimes comfort does work best. It just seems as the Camelot Kings have all the right assets to basically counter-initiate and handle it.
7,500 gold lead by the Camelot Kings here, just shy of 20 minutes, and looking to set up for the first Fire Giant attempt of the game. Genetics gets stunned, Ducky does some damage, but they don't even break Genetics' shield. That's how little they have against this Guardian so far. Genetics is undeterred walking up to 3 or 4 players. Captain Twig is undeterred, just W-King at Rapper, just like Variety has. Plus is good, an even better stun, and the winds drop down. Ducky's in danger. Netroid gets him with the snipe, and now Johnny has to run away. Lord of the Afterlife by Twig. Johnny has no illusion, no way to get out, and no ultimate to save his life. The beats from Captain Twig make sure he can continue the chase, just like the rest of the team. Collapses onto Rapper and puts him down.
Netroid is just completely melting the entirety of the Valhalla Valkyries. Last game we saw him having to prioritize a little bit more of that attack speed 10 base build because of the front line out of the Valhalla Valkyries, but this go around it is primarily mages and squishies and Variety reminding Emilito who's actually bossing this mid lane right now. Emil barely managing to stay alive, still has his beads, Aegis in tow, so Variety tries to go a little bit too deep here. I think this is an Ami can escape.
Uses the stealth to get away. That's where Variety was hunting. He said, okay, Emilito's going back towards the fountain. Easy, I got this. I'll get him right out of stealth. And then Emilito beelined the other direction, actually went towards the door to walk out of the base to make sure he get away. But, well, I mean, look where Variety's standing. We're 21 minutes in, and he's standing behind enemy lines, sitting inside their base, trying to do something. Right side Phoenix under siege. The Camelot Kings will shove that one quickly and make quick work of the bird. Meanwhile, Variety still standing in the back line. He'll push Ducky back. Rapper takes a bit of damage, feared away by the Sigil. It looks like the Camelot Kings may want to go for a retreat here unless Variety has something to say about it. We'll get the catch out onto Emilito. Rapper gets plucked by Genetics, and that may just be the end of Rapper. Luckily for him, he's got the leap to get away. Ducky drops the ult in the back line, looking for anybody, but it's his own life that he's got to worry about.
Honestly, the saving grace right now for the Valhalla Valkyries is that Netroid doesn't have that Deathbringer online just yet, but Emilito, he won't get a chance to dash away. Astral Barrage raining down upon him, as well as the Morgan Le Fay DPS. Captain Twig gonna clean up Johnny with the overhead smash, and just like that, a clean deicide for the Camelot Kings, and the Valhalla Valkyries gonna find themselves with yet another set loss. But a great fight, I think, that they put up in game number 1. Game number 2, that one kind of just gets away from you there, but I think that was more so an issue with the draft in general as opposed to the individual players.
Yeah, tough matchup here for the Valhalla Valkyries going up against the #1 seeded Camelot Kings. It's a tall task that you have to go up against for them, and Camelot Kings, they made pretty quick work of it. It didn't look too difficult for them, a little slow on the trigger, but eventually by the end of it, they are able to pull through.
And I can definitely respect it. It's nice seeing Johnny try to resort back to the AOs. It's cool and all, but unfortunately, Genetics, he's going to maintain that 100% Capri standing.
They'll make sure that they can lead the Camelot Kings to a victory. We're going to cut it to a break, and we'll come back. The desk will break down that set.
Genetics. Who needs good ping when you got mechanics like that between Kings and Genetics?
Don't slip on the trail. Don't slip on the trail. Tempo, tempo. Can you keep up with my tempo? Tempo. Yeah, yeah. Blowing up. C4. I just hit the Mike Jackson on my tiptoes. Oh yeah. I know we go wherever that wind blows. The endo. Don't slip on the trail. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the. Don't slip on the trail. High key, I know. I send all of my rap foes like they my tadpoles. Yeah, yeah. Blowing up, C4. I just had to go crack now on my depot. Yeah, yeah, that Draco bustin' like free throws.
Something about these teams with the purple in their jerseys maybe gives them some extra power, the royal mindset maybe for the Camelot Kings. And you can get your own royal mindset with some purple jerseys and more at shop.smiteproleague.com. All of it furnished by our apparel sponsor, Insight Apparel Company. If you don't want a jersey, we also got some SPL merch as well. SPL hoodies, SPL t-shirts, SPL beanies, and Gore's got something for me. What you got,
I'll
Gore?
one you up. There's also an SPL jersey. So
There
you
is an
can get a
SPL jersey
jersey.
as well.
If you don't know who you want to root for, you can just rep the SPL.
If you're just rooting for the league,
I
then, then shop.smiteproleague.com is your go-to destination. Royal Purple, though, Gore, it's the winners here in this one. Somehow less close than game number 1. We had a 1, I believe, was where we left off on the Scarab's Blessing counter. And unfortunately, less than 1 is 0. And that's the amount of kills the Valkyries ended up with here in game 2.
Yeah.
Break
the
it
Kings
down,
did
Gore.
it. Yeah, I mean, okay. Hey guys, the Kings won, and they won pretty hard. I think they have a lot of merits, and you can see some good fight back from the Valks throughout that game, but realistically, you just get to see some insane control that comes through from the Kings. A lot of just good carry potential. You had mentioned the fact that, well, Metroid's kind of been popping off on top of this ROM, has a pretty good game there. This Hercules was really good in game number 1, and guess what? It returned part 2. Here, I mean, it just feels like they were struggling to figure out where exactly they wanted to put their pressure. The Ao Kuang didn't necessarily get to become the hyper carry that we're used to seeing. Zhang Hui did exactly what Zhang Hui's been doing all year. He's 2-12 now. It just feels like a draft that wasn't necessarily destined to fail, but was going to be difficult to execute on to begin with. And then the Valkyries also weren't able to execute it in game, so it was difficult from conception. And it was only downhill from there for them. And the Kings, on the other side, just got to have a whale of a time.
Netroid did not die today. That is a fun fact. Nobody died in game number 2. So maybe not all that stand out of a fact. I believe it was 707 in game 1, then 608 in game 2. I'm not going to do that math,
you
but
know
that
what?
is double-digit kills, double-digit assists, and the big old goose egg in the death column.
Genetics is 2 times James Bond. It's 0014.
Or would it just be... No, you're right. 0014.
I was hoping that was going to be a funnier joke than it was. I apologize to everyone that had to hear that.
No, never apologize, Gore, because he was twice as sneaky with his Scarab's Blessings because we didn't catch him this game if they did end up coming out. Top damage on the Valkyries was 12k, and that was lower than the top 4 damage dealers on the Kings there in that game, everyone but Genetics. So this Kings team continues to roll, Gore.
Yeah.
I don't know... And again, this is no disrespect to the Valkyries. I don't know how much stock you can put in this game for the Kings because they needed to win like this to give you confidence in their momentum moving forward. Unfortunately for the Valkyries, I do believe this means they will be left out of the Phase 2 playoffs. And so now the Camelot Kings just fighting for their seeding. Captain Twig, the jungler for the Camelot Kings, standing by for the post-game interview. Twig, congrats on the win. Thanks for sitting down with me. It's always difficult, to kind of break down those games. Felt like top to bottom, you guys were effectively just the better team here in this matchup. So I'm gonna throw you, maybe not a curveball, but maybe a vague one here. So you're gonna have to rack the old brain. What do you think you guys did right today that got you the win over the Valkyries?
I think stay calm after things go wrong, especially in game one. I think a lot went wrong at the start of the game, and just staying to our game plan, not really getting tilted or focused over like what we did wrong, but what we should do next.
Yeah, you refocus something fierce going into game two, and you blank them and kind of roll over them in game two. Your next two matchups against teams in the top half of the league, Leviathans and Dragons. At this point, you're fighting for Phase 2 playoff placement. Do you feel any extra pressure going up against those top half teams, or is the mindset really just play your own game?
Absolutely feel more pressure. I mean, I love the games against the top teams. I always think we can win, and if we play well, and I always feel like if we don't, then we get punished. We would really need at least one win to make sure that we have a really good shot to get first seed. But if we get both, there's almost no way people can take us off the first seed spot. And it would be a great accomplishment, to get that first seed in a split when we don't have everyone in NA. And just as a player, it's a great accomplishment.
Absolutely. Look, you guys are one of the most exciting teams to watch right now. You're playing like maybe the best team in the league. Although I know, humble as ever, you wouldn't say that, but you guys are definitely up towards the top of the play style right now here in the SPL. Twig, congrats on the win. Thanks for sitting down with me. Excited for those big matchups later on.
Cheers, thanks.
Yep. And so, Gore, now we get to talk about the Kings and those future matchups as well. Leviathans is going to be who they face later on this weekend. That's a big one. And I think that gives some insight. What Captain Twig said there is, look, there's always going to be extra pressure, but those are also fun matchups. At this point, though, definitely said that playing for seeding is important, and so the standings and as they shift around over the next few weeks, couple weeks really, because it's this week, next week, and then Phase 2 playoffs. We're getting really close to it.
Yeah,
Kings got some big ones, though, that'll maybe shift things up.
And not easy ones at that, right? Leviathan's just tackling them first. They have to play them tomorrow. That is not necessarily going to be a very easy one for them to try and just conquer. But the goal is, as you had highlighted, to stay up in those top two. I guess if you're the Kings, top two if you're the Bolts. Maybe knock the Bolts down if you're the Dragons. That's also going to be an interesting matchup for the Kings when they have to face them. I believe that's next week.
Yep.
But ultimately, top two, as long as the format is the exact same, so don't quote me on this, but I believe what we did for Phase 1 playoffs was the top two, guess what, got the bye into immediately the semifinals. Yep. So that would be a great spot to be in if you are the Kings, and whoever is able to take either the top two or top three, depending on how these next few sets go, because the Dragons, the Bolts, and the Kings are all just close enough. I think the Leviathans still might be close enough to be able to disrupt some things. It just depends on how a lot of these sets go, whether they're 2-0 wins, 2-0 losses for those top teams.
Disruption could happen tomorrow as the Leviathans and the Kings round out our broadcast on Saturday. Jade Dragons don't have an easy weekend here, Gore. They go up against the Oni Warriors, who, on the right day, can take the game to some of these top half teams. And then the Dragons have the matchup against the Bolts to end the weekend. So not an easy stretch of games at all for this Dragons team. Kind of early thoughts here. I think Dragons have to be favorites in their matchup against the Oni Warriors.
Yes.
But do you think this one could be close?
I think it's going to be a lot closer. Again, this one, and we had kind of had this conversation very similarly with the Titans. It depends on which Warriors we get to see today. Sometimes they show up, and it's, sometimes it's just Nika. In fact, Nika single-handedly carried a game versus the Kings and was able to push them at least to 3. But if we can get the rest of the team to show up the way that we've seen they're capable of so far this year, it's been far and few in between, but when they do and lightning strikes, they look really, really solid. That's what I'm hoping for today.
Lightning strike score. That's the Bolts.
That's the Bolts, yeah. Well,
what are the Oni Warriors? When the swords slash, yeah, we're rolling with that one. Speculation will be gone. Dragons versus Oni Warriors coming up next. Stick around.